Welcome to Creative Brews. I'm Kristen, and this is your weekly dose of creativity, where photography, design, and life come together. So, grab your favorite drink, and let's talk about what's brewing. Good morning! We are going to jump right on in. Hopefully, I don't do a lot of coughing in this episode. I feel much better. It's just my allergies and stuff like that, because I don't know about where you live, but where I live, one day it's like chilly in the morning and then it heats up by the afternoon. Or one day will be cool, the next day is really hot and stuff like that. So, yeah. I have coffee this morning, and as you can tell from the title, we are going to be diving into synchronicities. What does it mean? Why is it meaningful? And stuff like that. Basically, all the whys. Yeah, what is it, why it matters, and how it might already be showing up in your life. Again, before we get started, I will say that basically I wasn't going to talk about spirituality and stuff like that with my podcast. But as you can tell, I keep, kind of bringing it into some things, just because it's, pretty much, I guess the best way to explain it, I'm trying to explain myself on the spot, um, is that I am leaning into spirituality more. Maybe it's because I'm a new mom. Maybe it's because of, your life changes, and stuff like that. I don't think it has anything to do with me becoming a new mom. I've always been very spiritual. It's just that I've never really wanted to talk about it with people because everybody has their own opinion. And really religious people, I think some people can understand what I'm talking about. Other people can't understand what I'm talking about or where I'm coming from. So they kind of look at you like you're crazy. And I guess that's probably anybody, not just religious people. Religious being, Christianity. I don't know if you're Buddhist, if you're Catholic, all the different religions. So, yeah, I was just going to kind of like, I don't know, I guess bring in some spirituality stuff here and there. That was my plan, but... And my cat is probably going to get on my nerves. I'm probably going to have to put her up. I wasn't necessarily going to talk about spiritual things. However, I've noticed that there's really not that many people out there, I guess, talking about it. I guess there are. Maybe I just am not privy to that. Just because, I'm not really on social media that much, these days. So, I am, but I'm not. I definitely have my windows of time. I think I talked about that in the last episode where, you kind of are on social media a little bit and you're like, okay, I got to get off. So I allow, like, it depends, because if I'm uploading something, then of course I'm going to be on it a little longer. or if I'm sharing things, because I do try to utilize the schedule. You know, you can schedule a lot of your posts. I try to utilize that, but there are some times where, you know, your life gets busy, you don't have time to schedule it, and stuff like that. That's why I try to use Sundays as my planning days. So that doesn't mean just in my planner, because I schedule my whole month. I'm not going to show you. I think the Sunday before a new month, I schedule my whole month. And, you know, that's bi-weekly, you know, so that way I can kind of see what my weeks are going to look like, which I basically already know. But then each Sunday after that, you know, if I have to get something together, content-wise, I do, and stuff like that. I'm not trying to make this longer than it needs to be because I want to really dive into synchronicities. The reason why I was talking about all that is because I did not really know that spiritual things, like spiritual topics and stuff like that I've talked about on this podcast, is one of my what would you call it? Popular topics, I guess you could say. I think after that it would be, I don't know, like the videos are the episodes where it's me and Patrick, which I need to situate our microphones because the audio sometimes is a little, you know, meh. But yeah, anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is, to wrap everything up with a nice little bow, I didn't imagine me sitting here talking about spiritual things or, you know, spiritual topics and stuff like that. I figured I would rope in the spirituality and stuff like that here and there, like I said, but I didn't think that I would be, you know, sitting and talking solely on that. Just because, like I said, everybody, at the end of the day, everybody has their own opinions. Everybody, you know, is on their own journey. So to some people, this will resonate. And you'll say, yeah, you know, I really get that. I really resonate with that. Other people are going to hear it and think that person's crazy. Like, there's no way that, you know, that can happen. There's no way that that's true. Or, you know, that's a stupid topic, you know, or something like that. So that is in the eye of the beholder, as they say. Whoever is watching or listening, you can only perceive what you're hearing, what you're seeing by your perception. So wherever you're at on your journey, you might be like, yeah, you know, what they're saying, I've had that happen, or that really resonates with me, you know, something like that. So I guess all of that to say, some of these topics you might be able to relate to, some of them you might not. Some of them you might hear and be like, that doesn't really, and then, you know, click off and all that other stuff, which is fine, because at the end of the day, this podcast isn't supposed to be for everybody. It's supposed to be for whoever needs to hear it. And I mean, that's basically it. Like, kind of like that, I started on my Instagram, Daily Dose of Reality, which was one thing that I'm working on, but there's a major thing that I'm working on that I can't quite say still. I'm very excited. But anyways, because it's kind of like, I don't know, everything's coming like full circle, you know, so definitely good September vibes. My August was amazing. Which, by the way, leave down below how your August was. Did you have an amazing August? Was it a bad August? Did you learn things? Like, stuff like that. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to get into what synchronicity means. So, it is the phenomenon of two seemingly unrelated events coinciding in a way that feels meaningfully connected to the observer, so to the eye of the beholder. So, to you listening or watching, you're the observer. And as we go through a lot of these topics, I think hopefully I can explain to the best of my ability and, kind of break it down of what I'm talking about, how can you apply it to your life and stuff like that. Because as we get deeper into these topics, it's going to be kind of sounding like I said earlier, kind of like people are going to think that I'm crazy. That doesn't work. I don't know what you're talking about, stuff like that. But once I, go through the topics for today, I think you can kind of be like, you know what? I can connect that in my life. Like, I can make that connection in my life. I've had XYZ happen. So just sit with me a minute and you'll see what I'm talking about. Even though there's no apparent casual link. So, we'll go into some key aspects here in a second. And I'll also have a few personal stories that I'll tell you guys. But that is the Google definition of synchronicity. Yes, I looked it up so that way I could just easily read it to you. Obviously, if you're a longtime viewer or listener, I have my own stuff written down. And once I go through the personal stories, I'll probably go find those little videos because I have them on video. Well, not all of them. I have 2 of them on video. That way you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But here's the question that I'm going to open this with to kind of get you thinking, and that way you kind of can connect the meaning of synchronicity to what I'm basically going to be talking about. So, have you ever kept seeing the same numbers everywhere? Or have you thought about someone and then they either call or text you out of the blue, like it could be someone that you haven't thought about in a long time, that you haven't even talked to in a long time. Maybe like somebody that you graduated from high school with or something like that. Those little moments that make you go, wait, what are the odds? So the moments that I'm talking about are like those little moments where you're like, that was strange, or, So to you, it is very meaningful. Have you ever told someone, like, oh my God, you'll never guess, oh my God, I keep seeing 11:11, or I keep seeing 12:12, and you tell someone and they're just looking at you like, okay, like, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to react? Those are just some examples. Or have you ever, been out in public and you run into someone, like maybe y'all used to be best friends like 20 years ago, and then, 20 years later, y'all bump into each other in the store, and that other person's like, yeah, I thought about you the other day, and oh my God, it's so crazy we bump into each other. So that's basically what I'm talking about. And then whenever you tell somebody that you keep seeing these numbers, they're just looking at you like, what do you want me to do with that information? And then, like I said, I'm going to have to probably put her up so that way I don't lose my train of thought. And then they're like I've had a few people say, well, you're just looking for it. You look at the clock and you're like, oh, it's almost 11:11. Or, it's almost 11:11, so let me just stare at the clock until it turns. That's not what I'm talking about either. What I'm talking about is true synchronicity cannot necessarily. Well, no, I'll go back. True synchronicity cannot be controlled. So what I'm saying is you cannot just so happen to look at the clock and it's 11:10 and then you stare at the clock until it's 11:11 and say, "Oh my god, synchronicity." No. That's not what I'm talking about. That is absolutely not what I'm talking about. So if that's what you think I'm talking about, then, maybe go back, re-listen to the meaning of synchronicity. Also, too, I'm going to preface this with, if you need more explanation and stuff like that, I would do your own research. That would be the best thing that you could do. It's kind of like, after this episode, take this information however you want to, and then, do your own research. Because sometimes maybe I don't really explain things well. Maybe you need some more explanation, maybe some examples and stuff like that. So yeah, we went through some everyday examples and relatable examples. Not just seeing repeated numbers, not just thinking of someone and then they suddenly appear, but running into the same phrase or book or song multiple times, and you're not looking for it, So let's say you see, I don't know, it could be anything, like a song or something. And you keep seeing it, or you keep hearing it, like you heard it in the store, and then you hear it on the radio, and then you go home, and Apple Music is recommending this song. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, just kind of patterns that you notice in your life and stuff like that. So okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it to my examples. And then after that, we'll talk about maybe some light spiritual connections. Because I'm not here to talk you into believing these things. I'm not like forcing forcing this information on you or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to force this stuff, down your throat or anything like that. So, what I am trying to do is just offer, the information, and stuff like that. I think all of this stuff is very interesting. That's why I have been in the spiritual world for a very long time. I always dismissed everything that, like the patterns, all the synchronicities before. I dismissed them and was like, oh, well, kind of like with everybody, some people that are listening or watching now, you're probably thinking, oh, well, you're just making something out of nothing. I think that's the best way to put it. A lot of people hear this stuff and they're like, well, you're just making something out of nothing. It's just a coincidence, go on about your life. What I'm talking about is whenever you have coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, like coincidence cubed happened, and you kind of start to notice those things, and you're like, okay, I'm listening. You finally have my attention. But when you finally wake up, maybe you've been through a lot of stuff in your life. I have. We're not going to go down that road. I've been through quite a bit of stuff in my life. And so whenever you've been through things and then, you've dismissed stuff before that was trying to get you to listen, but you didn't listen, you kind of wake up. That's the best way I can put it. Once you go through a spiritual awakening and all this stuff, the blindfold that you have on is lifted. That's all I have to say. So if you're someone watching or listening and you're like, this doesn't make any sense, I don't believe this is a load of crap, you probably have blindfolds on. That's all I'm going to say. Nothing against you and where you're at on your journey, but all I have to say is it's not crazy, number one. And number two, society has a way of, if you didn't have a blindfold on before, they'll try to put a blindfold on you. Does that make sense? I hope all this is making sense. So I'm just here to kind of not only like talk about these topics from my point of view, because again, I only know so much from my point of view, what I've been through in my life, how I made these connections and stuff like that. So like manifestation. We'll go off subject for a minute. Manifestation, manifesting. Some people call it that. Some people call it praying. So, you know what I mean? It really just depends on how you apply this in your life, how you make the connection, if you make a connection, and stuff like that. So, yes. Okay, so before I get into my examples, I'm going to leave you with this question. So that way you can not only think about the question in the beginning, but this question as well. So think about a time this has happened in your own life. Was it just a coincidence or something more? So my examples that I have is for the past, well, I'll leave that one for the end because it's a pretty big one, I think. So the first one was a praying mantis, I think landed on me. I think it was on the back of me. And see, I've had this happen before a long time ago in my life. And I literally was walking around campus when I was in college with a full-blown adult praying mantis on my back. Which I was just like, that's kind of crazy. Finally, somebody told me, one of my friends from one of my graphic design classes told me, hey, you have a praying mantis on your back. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And I just hit my mic. Yay. Okay. So there's that. The other example is these were all happened very recently. They all happened in August, which August is this August has been a pretty big month for me personally. Well, me and my family. And so definitely a month of harvest for sure. It's been amazing. Anyways, we were on a walk. It's been sometime in August. And I lately have been, finding a lot of different like flowers and stuff like that, or little bugs. And so I'll get my phone out real quick and record it. And, I don't know, just whatever catches my eye. And I'm like, oh, I got to get that. It's the photographer and me wanting to document, and I got to get that shot, And two, because it's a way for me to feel connected to nature, basically. So, it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of like still being connected. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyways, so I saw this flower and I was like, oh, that's a weird flower. I'm going to pull over and get like a little video or something of it. And he was like, okay. So he kind of walked slowly still, so that way our son doesn't get upset or, wondering why we're just sitting. And so I'm literally getting this shot of this flower, and I'll put it up on the screen somewhere. And this butterfly just randomly comes and sits on it. And I'm like, and I'm literally recording the flower. The butterfly wasn't on the flower to begin with, nothing like that. So I kind of see that as like, then, now I see that as a synchronicity. Then when it was happening, I think in the video you can even hear me say, oh my God. I was speaking to my fiance. I was like, this butterfly just flew up on this flower while I'm, videoing it, or while I'm getting this video of it. And he's like, really? Wow. It was just like a wow moment. So that's a good example, because sometimes in your life when it is happening to you, you might not see it as a synchronicity in the beginning, but then, that saying hindsight is 2020. Then you look back, maybe it keeps happening or something similar keeps happening, and you're like, huh, okay. Then that's whenever the blindfold gets lifted and you're like, okay, I see. So, yeah. And then the other example, again, we were, me, my fiance, and our son was in the car. We were trying to donate his clothes to Once Upon a Child. So we arrived, we dropped it off, we went and did some things, came back once they said that they were done, and we picked up whatever clothes they didn't want and stuff like that, and we put it in, back in our trunk and stuff, and left. Well, I usually don't ride with the windows down, but for some reason I kind of had some of them cracked. And so we were literally about to leave, and my fiance was like, hey, there's a dragonfly on your seat. I was driving, he's in the back seat with our son. The dragonfly was on the passenger seat on the headrest. And so, y'all know me. We're literally like trying to leave, and so I kind of pull over and put on our hazards. And I'm like, wait, I gotta get a shot of this, because it was cool, so I just wanted to get a shot of it. And I did that, and he's like, oh my God, please don't let us get hit over a dragonfly. But so yeah, that was the other synchronicity. Okay, and then the last synchronicity is that basically I've been seeing repeated numbers, mainly 1111, 1212, occasionally 222, well, and here lately 111. I've been seeing a lot of repeated numbers. I think it all began a little before I got pregnant. I started seeing the repeated numbers, and I'm like, at first, I'm just like, okay, it's just a coincidence, and then you kind of shrug it off. But then, like I said, if it keeps happening, it's not just a coincidence. You know what I mean? And it's not just me looking at the clock. Oh, it's 11:10. Let's wait 1 minute. No, it's not that either. It could be the clock. It could be maybe you're listening to a song while you're working out, and you look down at the song and you see 222 or 111 or whatever. Or maybe you're on the phone trying to pay a bill and you have to put in your numbers. And they always say press 1 for this, 2 for this, 3 for that. And then put in your number. Maybe you end up with 1111. Stuff like that. But you have to not be blindfolded. Okay, so like I said, and sorry if I keep talking with my hands. I'm very animated. But like I said, if it keeps happening, like if it just happens once, then okay, I'll give it to you. Maybe it was a coincidence. Or maybe you're just got your blindfold on. So there's a question. Not a question. There's something to think about. So is it a coincidence or are you just blinded by the light? You know what I mean? I don't mean for that to sound harsh or for me to come across as being mean. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes, people need a little nudge, a little kick in the pants. So synchronicity, you can wrap it up with a little bow here with saying that it's either whatever you believe in and your belief system. So, whatever you believe in and your beliefs, your morals, what you live your life by, you can only understand things like this to that degree. I hope that makes sense. So, if you've gone through your life believing, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Then you might hear this stuff and you might be like, that's a crock of shit. You know what I mean? Like, so it really just depends on you as a person. Can you connect this in your life? Has it happened to you? I know I'm not the only one. I'm also probably not the only one talking about this. Like I said, there are other podcasters out there and people on YouTube that are in the spiritual numerology community, and I get into more of the spiritual stuff. Numerology, I've kind of dipped my big toe in, but I'm not like heavily in that. I know it's like with anything, it can turn bad. Just like with anything. But basically what I'm trying to say is synchronicities are like the universe's way of, winking at you. Winking at you. I don't know why I said weaky. Weaking? Wow. It's early. Or, if you believe in God or Jesus or whatever God you believe in, it's like their way of saying, I've got you. They put their hand on your shoulder. They say, I got your back. So, again, I keep hitting my microphone. That is however you can apply it in your life. That's, some ways that you can apply it. So, yeah, that's some light spiritual connections. Again, I'm not going to dive deep into that because I know everybody who is watching or listening probably believes in different things. Okay, so I think I've pretty much hit all the points that I wanted to make. I hope that this all made sense. That it kind of opens your eyes a little bit. Maybe gives you something to think about. I just wanted to talk and touch on this just because, I've experienced it, and keeps, experiencing it. So I'll leave you with some takeaways and just, something to think about. Obviously, I gave those 2 questions earlier in the episode, but pay attention this week. Notice if any patterns, numbers, or chance encounters, coincidences show up in your life. Write them down, kind of document them in some sort of way, and see if they connect to something you've been thinking about. Or maybe there's something in your life that you're trying to achieve or do, or maybe you can connect them in some sort of way in your life. Sometimes if you write it down each time that it happens, or maybe it's a screenshot situation. Like for me personally, there was a few times where I took a screenshot, because of whenever I saw 11:11, 12:12, whatever it was, I took a screenshot of it because I'm like, maybe it's just a coincidence. And then after a while, I noticed the pattern. I noticed the pattern without the screenshots. But sometimes it helps, so that way you can be like, okay, I keep experiencing this. Let me sit with that and really, just think about it. Maybe meditate about it if that works for you. Journal about it if that works for you. Maybe just sit somewhere in a quiet room or outside in nature and think about it. Just kind of see where you can make that connection in your life. Like I said, I noticed it because that's how many times I've seen it. And I think it first started happening to me, like I said, a little before I got pregnant. Beforehand, I would see it here and there, but not as much. So I got pregnant early. I found out March of 2024. And I still, to this day, keep seeing repeated numbers. It's not all the time on the clock. It's not all the time, So I know some people will say, well, you're just making your own, you are just trying to make something out of nothing. No, it's not that. I think I've pretty much explained that. I know some people are going to still be in denial, and that's okay. Maybe it won't click for them until later in their life, or maybe it won't ever, but excuse me. But I'm here to tell you it's not just a coincidence. So, and if you're someone who feels crazy for believing in this, or maybe you're experiencing some things that people around you are saying, oh, it's just a coincidence. If you can make the connection in your life and it means something to you, it's not just a coincidence. You know what I mean? So, there's some things to think about here. Again, I hope this all made sense. If you need more explanation or someone to talk to, you can always comment down below on YouTube. I think you can comment on Apple. You can definitely comment on Spotify. And if you don't want your stuff out there to the world, you can always DM me or email me. So, I'm on Instagram. I think my email is on my YouTube. I'll leave it in the show notes too. So all of my links and everything is down in the show notes below. Like I said, do your own research. I'm trying to go through everything just to make sure I didn't forget anything. So yeah, I'll leave with this. So for me, synchronicity feels like not only a nudge from the universe or winking at me, but it's that in alignment. Like the universe is saying, keep going, you got this. Or like the universe, or whoever you believe in, is winking at you, or saying, I've got your back. So I believe that's everything. I'm going to go ahead and go before my son's getting irritated. Because I kind of have it blocked off in here. And he's getting irritated that he can't fully come in here because then he'll knock the camera and the lights and stuff like that. Anyways, I'm excited to, like I say, every time continuously be able to do this. I hope with this podcast that it helps someone out there. I feel like it does, to know that you're not alone. You don't need to feel crazy or anything like that. But yeah, so it's funny because I'm talking about something that I never thought I would ever see the day where I'm talking about it, especially on a platform like YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. So yeah, I don't know. It's crazy, but amazing all at the same time. I'm here for it. I hope you all are here for it. But yeah, I'm excited to continue to talk about things that interest me and be able to find my little community out there in the world. So yeah, if this resonated with you, please share it. Please share it with someone who needs to maybe hear it. Maybe, you've talked to someone recently about this, and maybe it'll offer some more information. But I will see you all in the next episode. So yeah, we'll keep the spiritual topics sprinkled in with the other topics. And that's basically the reason why I say photography, or is it photography, design, and life come together. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a great week. Bye!